All right. Whew. All right. Hello, hello, hello. Let me tell y'all, it is exhausting walking through snow. Like, quick meds check for anyone who takes vitamins in the morning or medication that they need to take in the morning. See, it's one of those things where it's important to have stuff in front of you so that you remember to do things. In theory, I should have done this before going live, but you know. Oh, the wonders of not being a human who has their body working naturally. Okay, self-care complete. All right, hello, welcome. Let us get into it. So, last week we've got weather, very autumn looking. All the leaves are basically down. Everything is uh, kind of what you'd expect from November. Oh yeah, it was raining. That sucks. uh, but personally, I'll take rain over snow. So there's the wind is part of what you're hearing, along with the the creek raging, like that low rumble. Don't worry about that. That's some snow fencing that got blown away. Uh, so one of the things I mentioned last week is Hatchet, the book. If you're unfamiliar, a kid goes and lives in the woods by himself, and he eventually dies. But part of that is in this kind of weather, where uh, things change very suddenly, and the conditions for living get very, very hard. So here we can see my little bridge is completely damming at this point. Uh, so we've got a just full-on creaking this way, which is a aspect of something that I actually want to do, getting in with a pickaxe and making a channel for that water to properly flow that way so it doesn't come this way, which is a problem. Uh, there's a lot of problems in general with water, and when you have ground at various levels. So I think because this is lower technically than over here, where the actual creek is supposed to be. Ignore me while I completely flounder my way through this space that is not yet pathed through. just, just escape. It's fine. But because the water level tries to even out, when you have pockets that are lower than other spots, they end up attracting more and more water. So this walk was miserable because at some point your clothes get wet. And when you're not wearing wool almost exclusively, the water just eats a lot of the heat in your body and just like wicks that away. And that's why there's that whole bushcraft saying of cotton kills. So it's one of the more interesting aspects of doing this kind of stuff and having these kinds of experiences is that you get a little bit more view on like if you get wet in a scenario like this where it's getting colder, you need to fix that ASAP. It's easy to ignore when you're in a situation like this. It's easy to be like just trudging along, letting the adrenaline really power you through. The creek is so big, it's so wild because we've had such a drought. It's always just a little bit more astonishing when you're trying to like go to the week prior, and I've got like that board on a plank, like or that plank on like ground that you can see, and just now we've got this rage of a river, a creek. River sounds better. It's all about width. I don't know, but anyway, what I was saying is, so the adrenaline will keep you motivated to get to a spot. It's very simple to just ignore a lot of your body functions when you've got such high adrenaline going. So I didn't even know my boots and pants were soaked until I got back in. Like I was just kind of trudging along at this point. But given the rain and everything, it's bound to happen. So the creek's going. That's wild. I love all the little waterfalls that I've got around here. They're so good. They're even wilder when you add ice to the mix. But just like, listen to that. So good. It's the power of water is often underestimated, but it is such a strong element. And you'll see that more in this week's video, but good Lord, is water oppressive and murderous and just a wild element. Like, for any Avatar fans, it's very much that. Like, water is life. So it's important to respect it. It's important to give it the reverence it deserves, because it'll mess you up if you're not paying attention. So, moreover, when talking about safety and in general, like LARP stuff, getting back to being in cold and or wet conditions, it's super important to have good footwear. Like, I used my LARP boots for the walk today, and oh Lord, did it make a difference, because I just use my working boots normally, and they're okay. They're pretty waterproof up to a point. Like, I can step in a puddle and be okay, but if it sinks at all, I'm going to have wet shoes or wet socks, and it's just the worst. Like, Oh. So this was a fun adventure right here because my usual foothold is got some water running over it. And I hope that isn't audible. Okay. It shouldn't be, but we'll probably see. Anyway, um, so the ancient Vikings used a different concept of like socks made of wool called winning gauze. They actually did have socks as well, but winning gauze helped to seal out your boot. So you would have your shoe. Better. Anyway, you have your shoe, and then like at the heel portion, or not heel, you would wrap, and then like wrap all the way up the boot, above the boot, giving you a very good seal. Um, and again, wool being king gives you such a better protection from getting your feet wet. Having been in a LARP and been in situations where it rained the entire duration of the LARP, trench foot is a real worry. And it like sounds kind of weird and fake, but like if your foot stays wet for far too long and just like it gets very gross very quickly. Like there is a need for the body to continue to be dry. It's unreal just how quickly that being wet will mess you up. So, given that, the video is about to end because it got cut off, which is unfortunate. Because I really wanted to go back out, but I really didn't want to get sick or have problems with myself. So it sucks. It's unfortunate, but we have what we have. So, quick BRB, and we're going to get into this week. All right, welcome back. As you can see, there's less snow than a lot of people probably expected. This has melted. This is how to put it. So, initial snowfalls and everything. It's initially quite fluffy. It's very, uh, it's very loose, and over time, with the sun and everything, it compacts. So, at one point, this was about 2-3 feet of snow, which, again, some of it blows and drifts away, but it's wild to be in a situation where you have snow up to your hips. So, as you can see, the landscape is very different at this point. Having not great means and ways to maneuver through. You can just hear the crunching of the snow. It's gross. I hate it. I've never been a fan of the snow. It's it's bad. Like, it's, I don't like being cold, and I've always been kind of cold, but when you have the threat of being cold and wet and just like there's a lot of additional exertion that goes into trudging through snow. As I did walk the path, as you can kind of see, before going out today, because I wanted to make sure I could actually go through the path. Like, there's so many trees in this configuration where the snow piled up on top of them on the branches and weighed them down all the way to the ground. It's gross. It breaks the trees, it forms them to be in a situation and be oriented such that they grow sideways, which is part of the issue I'm fighting. So I'm going to take time, especially during this walk here, to kind of show that off. So right here, you can kind of see that. Like, this has this weird arc of this tree being just brought down by the snow. Like, it just completely weighed down. Bonk. But if you just like get it out of that, it can stand back up at least a little bit. Here's this little waterfall going hard. So online, I alluded to taking that walkthrough and just marveling at this must be like this style of snowstorm must have been the inspiration for Dante's Inferno, the final circle of hell being frozen. Because this is just a hellscape. Like, everything is down and in the way, and everything just changed so suddenly. Like, this will likely be the biggest dramatic change from the previous week to this. Like, here's that bit. It's still submerged at the base, but good lord. The water continues to flow. And I'm kind of keeping my head down because I have to weave through all of these branches that are way lower than they're supposed to be. When I built the path initially, I gave myself a lot of headroom for good reason. So you can just get a feel for how cramped and how aggressive this feels. And some of this is cleaned up from previous day. It was tempting to leave everything and just really just show the full devastation. At the same time, anytime you feel the motivation to clean or do something positive, you really should. So yeah, it's hard to even feel out the path in a lot of ways. When I have the camera on and I'm doing the walk, I really do fall into this flow of where I go. But when you're just walking and when there wasn't footfalls to follow, waterfalls are so pretty. I love them. Just heckin' love a good waterfall. But if it weren't for my tracks, you would also see that there are a ton of deer tracks that are going through. They use the same paths that I've been making, which makes me feel good, as it's kind of a chicken or egg thing though, because I built a lot of the paths on deer trails. So either way, oh, that bird freaked me out because it was so loud and just out of nowhere. So, oof. And just the sight of everything. Like you have such better visual clarity, I think is the term, of just being able to see through everything. No leaf coverage whatsoever. So, this is part of that hellscape aspect I was talking about. Like, everything is just kind of like down and in the way, and like, just a foot of snow on top of these trees that are pulling them down. Like, look at that. Bonk. I've you just expect it at this point. And I'm fairly strong, and it's still like heavy and just a burden to get these trees to stand up. Because if they don't, they're going to just end up getting cut down, which is less preferable. I prefer them to just stay standing and be their own. But this is very much like a storm we had a couple of years ago, in that the weight of the snow breaks the tree very often. I wish I had a better visual for it, but like normally you think of a tree breaking off and it's kind of like just it breaks. But in this, it buckles under the pressure, and like the wood like splinters outwards. So you've got this exposed part going through the middle of the tree. Super weird. Like, it does not feel like it makes sense. It feels like this shouldn't be how winter is. And it definitely shouldn't be all at once the very first snow of the season. For sure. Good lord. Bonk. It's having like I almost never wear a hat. And even just doing these, it still blows my mind. So we've got rock, we've got the concrete piece, and they're completely covered at this point. You have to be especially careful with things with ice. Having a foothold be slippery is the worst, especially when you've got a creek right there. So, utmost care. I should probably leave a vaulting stick at that point so I can get to and fro. But whatever, I will make do. Mental note for next time. Yeah. Seeing some deer tracks here. Also, their droppings are very obvious. It's funny how similar deer and bunny poop are, but it's actually kind of tricky to tell the difference, which is surprising considering size of animal, but biology is a very strange concept. So just kind of like trying to clear up some more of these downed tree bits. Like, I don't even know if it's distinguishable where I am, but I'm coming back to the bramble area. Like, this is where all the brambles are. So, I saw this. I just really wanted to get that out. It's so wild. This is not normal. I do want to make that clear that the snow weighing trees down to the ground is not normal. That does not usually happen. And it's so crazy. It feels really bad. And this is just, gotta say, this didn't really happen. People will try to liken this kind of thing to the blizzard of 77 because there are places that got way more snow than I did that are nearby. Like within a half-hour drive, people got 7 feet of snow. 7 feet. I can't even fathom having snow that's just over the door. But that's what happened in 77 too. The difference about the blizzard of 77 is that the lake froze. A lot of the snow blew in from the lake. It wasn't necessarily falling, it was just relocating. So you had tons and tons of snow just moving onto the land. Whereas this is all fresh. The lake isn't even frozen. We've got so much. Ugh, it's gross. I hate snow so much. If it wasn't very clear, but this is very much a global warming thing. As this should not happen. This is just gross and wrong, and I can't help but feel angry about that. All right, so we are back to where the other video ended. So unfortunately, you don't have a very clear visualization from last week to this week for this section, but nothing changed really from the week prior if you wanted to go back and look at that. So this is so crazy that, like, beyond that this is a week later, that almost all of this fell within the first 3 days of, like, the day I recorded the last video to the day that, like, the end of the weekend. Good Lord. Like, just look at that. Also, a guilty pleasure is watching snow fall into water, but you know, it's just so much. Bonk. Sorry for the noise that makes. I really am not intending to, like, hit my head, obviously, so bear with me. So that path looks real gross. Let's go this way. And see that also, when it's doing this, it can create some damming effects. Like if that gets any lower, it's going to create problems. So this upkeep is unreal. At the same time, next week it might be green again. This Alma could melt, and things could go back to looking the way it did the previous week. But that's just part of this area now. It's so weird. Oh, getting back to a different point. Trudging through snow, I don't know about most people's gait. Mine's fairly low. Like I generally keep my feet low to the ground when I walk. So snow forces you to further lift your legs when you're walking. So you're using additional muscles, and it's really kind of fascinating how, like, sorry about that, how aggressive and different walking in snow really is, and just how it feels different on the tail end. So it's wild. I can't. But all the waterfalls are real pretty. I'm really tempted to grab that stick that's in the water there that fell, but thinking about the whole like getting wet aspect is definitely a deterrent. And that I'm recording, so also. But given I weren't recording, I probably would have tried a little bit harder, like gotten a stick and see if I could move it over to the shore. But just the pure difference that snow makes on the visual landscape, and just how many trees fall during these kinds of snowstorms. Whew. No game ever has done anything this dramatic to winter. Like, it is so very different a landscape and effort and survival needs to stay warm and dry. It's ultra hard mode is all I could think of. Like, I have no idea how peoples do it. The Inuit, any Native Americans or indigenous peoples, just infinite respect, especially coming up to Indigenous Peoples Day, and just like staying alive and thriving and doing well in any place where nature can do this to you is just glorious. Infinite props to the people who endured this without any kinds of technology to stay warm or dry. Just fire and nature. Whew. Just look at that. It's so aggressive. Like, it doesn't move. I kicked it and it's not going anywhere. Whew. Just nature is so wild and dangerous. Like, it's hard to like imagine surviving. Just look at that. This is normally straight up and down. Just so heavy. Like, I cannot impress how heavy snow is. Like, just like these are fairly resilient trees, as you can see. For it to build up on the limbs and get them to fall to the ground like that, it's just it's, and I feel like the weight of this kind of thing might not be obvious when you're just watching it or whatever. Because you see some snow and you see it, and it's just like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm done with that. I love the ice that forms in the waterfalls, like right here. It's so good. But when you're actually like pushing full force, full body, like squat, press, whatever the appropriate term is, like people get, you know, usually at least their weight, probably more. So you could see that like I'm around 200 pounds. It's just that bit of snow can absolutely outweigh and just like out leverage you. It's scary. I feel like is the best way to put it. And I have a new reverence for nature that doing this kind of stuff, like my project 7 years ago, never would have. I didn't really have. Also, guilty pleasure, snow into the water. But it's one of those things where like you kind of understand things, but you don't really get to know them. Like, I bet most people just kind of like, yeah, people lived in this kind of area. How? Like, regardless of how good their clothing work was, how effective they were, like, it's so hard to be warm and create a space that's like decent for sleeping or anything like that. Oh my god. Like, I like to imagine a Minecraft mod probably does this pretty well, like having temperature needs, especially while you're sleeping, but just making everything that bit harder. Also, this was regular water before, and just gave it like a test. Like, yeah, it can hit. I put most of my weight on that ice, and it didn't crack. I wanted to crack the ice because that's another little guilty pleasure I have for snow and like things that you try to find joy in the world that's white and icy and mean. So that's what I've got for this week. We'll see what next week brings, but good lord, this was snowy apocalypse. So here's some waterfall, and thank you for watching. And that is going to be it for the video. I'm going to break and then play a little bit of a visual novel. I found one that I hadn't played or hadn't really heard much about, but it's supposed to be really good. So if that is something that interests you, come to twitch.tv/BronwynKenku, and I will be playing that for a bit. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.